before I got into astrology, I thought I was losing my mind half the time because I didn't realize I was so open to so many different energies. It wasn't mine, but I didn't know what I didn't know. Having somebody point out to me, hey, Kaylee, you're super sensitive to Mercury retrograde and to where the moon's at. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's crazy stuff. But I started looking into it and started seeing these patterns of, okay, I do tend to struggle around full moons. Well, that's something to pay attention to. So if I am struggling, I'm not wondering what's wrong with me or being really hard on myself. Instead, I can say, oh, I'm really sensitive to the energy and I'm struggling right now. What do I want to do about it? Do I want to protect myself in some way? Do I need to rest?
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm Jan Behringer, one of your super fun hosts, and we have Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose here on with us. Say hi, ladies. Hello. It's so good to be back hanging out with you guys. Yes, so good to hear your voices. Today we are going to talk about we're going to start with we're going to talk about the basics of astrology for a little while, for a couple of episodes. So that way everybody can get a sense of what it does, how it works, all those good things. So today we're going to talk about elements and elemental awesomeness. But let's get our get to know you question going. This is going to be a good one. This is a good one. This is a really good one. Julie thought of it like 5 seconds ago, and I went, oh my gosh. So, because we're talking about elements, what would be your element if you were in Avatar, The Last Airbender?
Kaylee said she couldn't decide, so I guess I'll go first to let her have more time to think about it.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah. Also, how's my mic? Because I'm not using my usual mic.
You're good.
You can hear me? Okay, great. So I would just going by my chart. I think I've always thought I'd be a water bender because it's the coolest one. It's not just the coolest one, but I mean, they like water is inside of everything and like the flow of it, and you can like build everything with water and move the ice and do all the things. And I always loved Katara. And but there's also like the bad part of it because they can be blood benders too, and that's scary, spooky stuff. But I just felt like I'd either be water or earth, but probably water because they're also the healers. They do the healing stuff, and that's super my jam. So that's my choice.
Yeah, I love it. I remember when after I had like gone to the beach for the first time after having kids and like doing all my healing work, and the water was like coming in, and I was like, I'm waterbending. Me and my sister were out there. I'm 29 years old, like water bending and whoosh, cartwheels and everything. And so I used to identify really strongly with that. If you look at my chart, I have so much air in my chart that is like, oh, obviously be an airbender, but I could never be a vegan. So I think that's a strike against me being an airbender and be like up there eating meat, and they'd be like, get out of here. And I'd be like, I can't fly anymore. So, probably also water. I just learned though, and I'm going to keep talking so Kayla can keep thinking too, but I also have a lot of words in my face, I guess. I just learned that if I look at Mayan astrology, apparently I'm a fire sign. Totally a fire, right? Crazy. And I just recently, as of yesterday, because I have this fun sacred rage thing I'm experiencing in the last 24 hours, um,
Yay, sacred
found out,
rage.
yes, found out that fire really does a lot of work for me in my body and in my spirit and in my work and in my magnetism. Like it's like bam, done. So I could be cool with that. I really don't think I could be an earthbender. So the end. No, no earthbending for me, but the other three might be fine, and I can't be a vegan.
So a non-vegan airbender.
Honestly, I
Okay.
just want to be the avatar, but delegate the earth crap to someone else.
Oh, that's too
Just
funny.
pass.
Too
All right,
funny.
Kaylee, you go ahead. I'm gonna stop talking
Okay,
somehow.
okay, I'll talk now. So part of why I was like, "Oh, I don't know," was because I am not super well versed in Avatar stuff. I've watched some episodes with my kids, but I don't know a lot about it. I mean, yeah, looking at my chart or just knowing my big three, people would probably be like, waterbender, definitely waterbender. But my chart is also super earth heavy. It just kind of hides.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, well maybe an earthbender, though apparently Jan does not want to earthbend.
You can do it.
I can do it. Um and so like not knowing tons and tons about what they actually do, I guess water bending or earth bending, though, like before we started and I said, I don't know. I think it was Jan was like, just you could be the avatar. And like that kind of thing, that being a little bit of all the things has always appealed to me. Like I remember when I was a kid reading Harry Potter books and I was like, no, I'm all the houses. And um like for like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, in case people are not as nerdy. Um,
I am,
that
so don't worry about
like
it.
it's like, oh, you can be this or this or and I'm like, no, but I want to be all the things. Like I am everything. I am all the things. So that's kind of a theme that like crops up for me a lot. And when I would create, so I used to read a ton of fantasy and sci-fi. Like I grew up just reading a ton of it. And so I would come up with my own versions of the stories and come up with brand new versions of the stories, or brand new stories rather. And very frequently in my mind, I would play a character that was part this and part this and part this, like that somehow married all these things together that other people thought couldn't be brought together.
Hmm.
And so that's just appealing to me.
That just sounds like the feminine truth, like all the parts. I am all the
Yeah,
parts. You're all the parts.
all
You're
the
in your
things.
feminine. I love
Yeah,
it.
100%.
So let's talk about what we're going to talk about in the next couple of in the next couple of sessions, the next couple of episodes. So that way people can get a sense of like why the heck are we even doing an astrology thing on a feminine podcast? Like I thought we were going to talk about woman shit. Sorry. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth anymore. But no, we're talking about everything, right? And the reason why we're talking about astrology is what?
Well, I think
Sorry, I'm laughing because I
astrology.
totally thought you were going to say. And then you're like, what? Sorry, Julie, you were starting to talk and I was starting to talk. Go ahead.
No, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, a big reason why we're doing this for people. Well, one is that's probably one of the biggest questions I've gotten about the podcast. All of us is I want to know more about you guys talk about the astrology stuff. I want to learn more about it. I don't understand it. Could you do like an astrology basics series? So I've gotten that request multiple times, but the other reason that we're doing it is because astrology is a way for us to understand ourselves more deeply, and that's a really big part of the feminine is going deep, going inward. And the feminine, like we were talking about with Kaylee, is concerned with the all, right? It's very concerned with like it's the void, so it's everything together. And astrology helps us marry so many things together. That's why people call it a quote unquote pseudoscience, because it's not a faith, right? It's not a faith or a religion. It's not quite a science because it's not regular astro stuff, like the study of the stars in that way.
There's so
It's
much
something in
math
the middle.
involved, though.
Yes, so much math. There is.
So
There's
much
so much
math
math.
involved.
Yeah, it's an art and it's a science, right? It's both. It's an art and a science. It's mathematical and all about words and what words you use to describe things and how you describe it and those descriptors. So astrology just has so many pieces of everything and it helps us weave all of those things together. It helps us understand our reality in a tangible way that we can, really grasp. And it just helps us to understand our feminine more deeply. So that's what I would say. Other thoughts?
What's coming to mind for me is um just that idea of like, okay, yeah, like what Jan said, we're talking about feminine things, and why are we bringing up astrology besides the fact that we're women who are astrologers? And to me, astrology is highly, highly symbolic and nuanced and layered. And that's the feminine to me as well. The feminine speaks in symbols, and there's meaning after meaning inside each symbol. And the meaning doesn't change in the thing itself. It's what you come to it with that changes how you understand the meaning. And so you can come back to the same chart over and over and over and over and over and still be learning something, because you're coming to it with something new in yourself. You're coming to it with greater awareness of something or less awareness of something. And for me, astrology is very intricately entwined with my own journey into more feminine energy. Like it was a
Mm.
huge part of me being able to, like, as Julie mentioned, understand myself more fully. And it's like the way that I focus on astrology, it digs so deeply into the feminine. Like I've shifted what astrology even is in a way, been given this guidance for like, okay, what is astrology and how is it used through a feminine lens? And so for me, it's like, well, of course astrology is related to the feminine. Like you can't separate them. um but that's my opinion.
I love it. Astrology is one of those things that are an occult practice, right? Occult meaning hidden, 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 not meaning evil, which I think a lot of people have an incorrect association with that word. But all occult or hidden practices are feminine based because it is about the unseen, and it is about that. And honestly, like from a practical standpoint, I just find it to be a really great shortcut into doing shadow work. And
Yeah.
shadow work is also feminine. Like, you want to find your greatest strengths, just look at your chart and then go, why do I hate the idea of this being in my chart? Okay, I should go work on that. Then I'll feel better in the end, and hooray, I'm healed, right? Like, that's kind of how that works. But it's a really powerful tool to be able to find those spaces within yourself that are not in alignment so that you can come back to alignment and then just feel like yourself, man.
Totally.
Yep.
Can I say one more thing about it?
Yeah.
The
All
one
means.
last thing I wanted to talk about is astrology is cyclical. And the feminine
Mm.
is cyclical, and it's all about cycles and the cycles of the planets, and it helps us understand our patterns, and cycles and patterns are very feminine. I just like, oh, I sorry, I'll say it one more time. Patterns are power. Patterns are power. Understanding your
Mhm.
patterns is power, and I'm so stuck on this right now, but anyway, that's why it's important. This is going to help you understand your patterns, understand yourself, do your shadow work, see your feminine. Like, it's going to do all the things for you, and that's why it's worthwhile to explore.
I love it. I love it so much. Thank you. Where does astrology come from? Can we talk about that for a second? And I
You
have a
wanna
big
start,
answer.
Kaylee? Oh,
Well, I was laughing internally when Jan asked that, like, where does astrology come from? Because it's like, okay, where doesn't it come from? Like, I think astrology has existed in one form or another as long as there have been human beings, to be perfectly honest. And there are so many ancient cultures that have some form of astrology, because the astrology that we generally think of as modern astrology, like, that's descended in part from like a certain branch, a certain uh, ecosystem even of astrology. But there are other ways of interpreting the heavens. There are other ways, many of which are probably lost. But like Jan brought up Mayan astrology. and how she's a fire sign in Mayan astrology. And it's like, okay, that is a different branch from a different location. Um, and I think human beings naturally are always looking up for understanding, as well as around them and inside of themselves for understanding. And it just makes sense that so many cultures would come up with this symbology, this system for being able to make some sense of what's going on around them and in them and above them. But Julie, it looked like you were going to say something. So go for it.
Oh, I echo everything Kaylee said. You can't not find astrology. If you go, I do not care what culture it is, how ancient it is, every single culture has astrology. And it is more, we're kind of more dissonant with our past right now, and the outlier that like we don't use astrology in our daily practices and lives, because everybody has. And so, like, there may be some people here who are like, well, what about the Bible? They don't have astrology. No, 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 no. Israel, I promise you, had astrology. There's astrology in the Bible. I'm like, one day maybe we'll do a whole breakdown of this, but because it's there, okay? It doesn't matter where you look, there is astrology. And I've even had people tell me there's astrology in the Quran as well. So like it's in every ancient part, and for people who are like part of that Israelite tradition and things like that, signs being the 12 tribes of Israel. There's tons of stuff about, there's a reason that Jesus talks about fish. Okay. There's a reason for that, because it's the time of Pisces, everybody. So I'm just saying that every culture has used it. And it used to be very married with the Catholic Church for a very long time. It wasn't until the late 1700s ish that the Catholic Church kind of like put out this book and started saying astrology is evil. So it's been part of all the traditions, not just Asian. There's tons of Asian traditions in this, not just like there's Amazonian, Mayan traditions. So anyway, sorry, I get on a soapbox about this because I think people just like to throw it aside as like, oh, that's a silly willy thing. Just go read your horoscope in the newspaper. And I'm like, no, no, no. This is ancient as like it is in your blood all the way back to the beginning. Okay. So I'll get off my soapbox now, but yes, that's where it comes.
I love your
I love
soapbox.
it. I love it. Thank you for the soapbox. So great. So I'm gonna get a little bit slightly less like historic. Well, whatever. I'm gonna just say words. Everything we put our consciousness on creates meaning and creates life. Humans have been looking up at the stars for our entire existence. We've been searching and finding meaning and building that meaning piece by piece by piece for thousands of years. This isn't just a woo-woo thing, and it's not a fly-by-night practice. It is a mirror of our consciousness that is the collective consciousness of looking up at the stars and telling stories and projecting those stories into the stars, projecting those stories into the planets. So when I talk about we talk about Pluto, right? Pluto is a fairly recently discovered planet. And so I really focus in on there's a difference between Pluto before we knew Pluto existed and after we knew Pluto existed, right? There's a difference in consciousness. Yeah, Pluto themes were there, but when we make that transition into that unconscious becoming conscious by becoming aware of that planet, we're different. This is a different story. This is a different conversation because it is the looking up. It is the collective unconscious and the collective conscious that is now doing that. And we don't know we're doing it. They've been doing it generation after generation for so long that we are still actively interacting with the stars right now, but we don't know it because it's just part of normal life. It's like the air we breathe. So our ancestors have created how much meaning is in the stars and which meanings are in the stars at a very deep collective conscious, unconscious level. And so that's where my perception of where astrology comes from is. It has nothing to do with like predicting
Mhm.
whatever, all that crap that people say about astrology.
I want to add to what you just said, Jan, because that was so beautifully put. I absolutely believe that the astronomical discoveries that we make mirror our changes in consciousness as well. And that then we start to make astrological sense of those astronomical discoveries. So, yeah, like the discovery of Pluto, that mirrored this shifting in our collective consciousness around things like power and vulnerability and death and rebirth. And even further discoveries about Pluto, for example, like discovering that there's a heart on Pluto. There's an actual like light spot on Pluto that looks like a heart. And that discovery, that astronomical discovery, mirrors this sense of like deep, deep love, and that we have value and worth and we're worthy of love regardless of what we do or don't do, like soul level worth that's connected to Pluto. And that idea of you can die 1,000 deaths and you're still worthy and you're still valuable and you're still powerful. And so, like, the discovery of asteroid goddesses definitely heralded this, like, greater openness to feminine energy that we're just like, I don't know, we're on this like huge wave that started a long time ago because some of those asteroid goddesses were discovered quite a long time ago, but it began the rumblings of waking up the feminine in us, or rather, it mirrored it mirrored those awakenings in us, our discovery of those feminine asteroids, or the fact that we named them after goddesses instead of naming them after gods.
I love this. I love it. I have so many theories about the asteroid belt, but that's for another conversation. P.S. Guys, Chiron was only discovered in 1977. Like, go home.
Yep.
Let's talk about what are some good ways that we can use astrology to better our lives and make things like use it in as like a tool rather than like I don't know. I think sometimes when we start getting way too into astrology and like this angle and that angle and all of this stuff, it just becomes like this voyeuristic obsession with a story. So how do we make it more practical and what should we be looking at like base level? What is the first, what if a person is like just starting out, like what do we need to look at and why do we care and what do we need to care about?
Practical tools. This is like my favorite thing about astrology. This is like one of my most favorite things. I already talked about, but I'll talk about it again. This idea that astrology helps you understand your patterns. So it helps you to see the patterns in your lives. Now we often use these patterns for forecasting purposes in some ways, or predictive purposes, meaning we are, because you know the cycle and you know what a cycle looks like, you can say, okay, well, we're at this part in the cycle. That means that this is what comes next, right? And so, in this very practical way of understanding your patterns, that helps you tap into the power of being able to let go and feel yourself being guided rather than trying to control all the time, rather than trying to like be tight-fisted. And so we may like, yes, I'm sure people have heard of horoscopes and maybe read something in a newspaper, but when we're tracking cycles in the sky and we're forecasting things, the idea is not to be like make predictions like you're going to die on this day, like this is what's going to happen to you for sure, you will do this thing. Like that's not what it's for. What it's for is to understand the cycles of life and what's happening in the cycle and in the spiral of life and how things may appear so that you can surrender, you can let go, you can move through your life with confidence, you can understand yourself more and what is good for you and what is not good for you. So I think that's like the first practical tool I would point out as we want to understand our patterns because that those patterns are power for us to be able to know how we can more deeply help ourselves release and let go, and also optimize for the optimal times and steel ourselves for the more difficult times, and allow ourselves to flow through life in a more easeful way. So that's the first tool that I'm going to lay out. What do you think, Kaylee?
Um, I'm debating how like practical this is, but it's what's coming up, so I'm gonna say it. Because there are probably people out there who are like me, and so this will be helpful. In my journey with astrology, before I got into astrology, I thought I was losing my mind half the time because I didn't realize I was so open to so many different energies. And half the time, if not more than half the time, whatever I was feeling, especially if it was overwhelming, it wasn't mine, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And having somebody point out to me, hey, Kaylee, have you noticed like you're super sensitive to Mercury retrograde and to where the moon's at? And I was like, what are you talking about? That's crazy stuff. But I started looking into it and like started seeing these patterns of like, okay, I do tend to struggle around full moons. Okay, well, that's something to pay attention to. So if I am struggling, I'm not wondering what's wrong with me or being really hard on myself. Instead, I can say, oh, I'm really sensitive to the energy and I'm struggling right now. What do I want to do about it? Do I want to protect myself in some way? Do I need to rest? Um, and there are times in my life when I have had really, really horrible periods of time where I was like basically suicidal and wondering like what is going on? Nothing I'm doing is helping, and being able to take those hard moments to God, yes, but also looking at the stars and saying, okay, what's going on right now? Is there something outside of me that can help me make sense of what's going on inside of me? And the number of times I was like, oh my gosh, this is transiting this. Like, no wonder I feel like I'm worthless right now. Like, there's something to learn from this. It doesn't mean anything about me. Like, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It just means that there's something I need to understand. There's an opportunity here. So instead of feeling like I was falling apart or somehow worthless or crazy, I could see, oh, something's pointing out something to me that I can learn that can help me. And then I stopped feeling so crazy and started feeling more like, oh, okay, like it can be a gift to feel all these things. It can be a gift to be aware of so many different things. And I can decide what I'm going to do with it. Like astrology helped me make sense of my internal world when my internal world made no sense to me at all. I could look up and start to understand. And then I could look in and be more gentle and more compassionate.
I love it. I found it incredibly empowering to recognize that on some soul level, I chose into this life, and all I need to do is figure out what experience my soul was trying to have. And it let me let go of a lot of stuff in the past that I was holding on to because I was like, this doesn't make sense. This is awful. Like, this is crap. Like, what is this? Why did this happen? Like, this was like a really weird situation that makes absolutely no sense. And it just was like literally only affected me. Like, what in the world was that? And I started to recognize, like, when I look at astrology, it's like, okay, my soul chose into this. And what was I supposed to learn? And I know when I can, that turns it into curiosity rather than powerlessness. And when you switch into curiosity mode, you can start to figure out the answers and you feel way more powerful, way more understanding of like, okay, I don't need, this isn't stuff that I need to like be mad about anymore or frustrated by or despair about, or why me? Like all of that stuff shifted when I started working with astrology because I was like, okay, how do I figure out what my soul's trying to teach me here?
Yeah, and I think with that, right, it's useful to just understand, like, just the plain and simpleness of it is like, why is a personality test useful for you? It's for you to understand yourself, right? Like you can understand yourself, the hardships, we already talked about, like, that goes right along with shadow work and doing the shadow work, which we've already kind of talked about, loving yourself more deeply. And I think what Jan pointed out is like, because a lot of people, I think, and there are people who do this, like, you can use astrology as a scapegoat kind of a thing, like, oh, it's just this, or like I think a lot of people think that's what it is. Like, astrology is just a way to get out of your problems and blame something else, but actually it's not. It's exactly what Jan said, which is no, taking charge of what you chose into coming to this life, what your soul wanted to do, what you're going through now, and giving you the tools to be like, okay, well, right now I'm really in this kind of like whatever Sagittarian energy. If I want to balance that, I need to have more of a Gemini energy to balance out. It can help like, what's my next step? Where can I rebalance myself? How can I help myself? So it gives you these practical guidelines for understanding like what your next step should be, planning for things, working through the low lows and the high highs, and just taking ownership of yourself and what your soul wanted to do.
Yeah, I love that you said personality test. I'm like extremely bad at taking personality tests. I get a different answer every time. Everyone tells me, "Oh, this is what you need to do," and then I try to go do it, and I'm like, "This seems annoying." Every time. There's only one personality test where it asks you questions about yourself that I actually felt like was in alignment. And it's like really expensive test. So like, and it was the Clifton Strengths test, and you're like on the edge of your seat. But the answers to that test lined up with my astrological points. The answers to that test were like high analysis, hello air, and then high relational, hello water. Like it was all of that. I was just like, I remember taking my sheet and I wrote, this is Jupiter in Pisces, and this is so if you're bad and this is a Gemini trait too, like so bad. Like my aunt was like, help me with my Enneagram test because I keep getting the different answer every time. And I'm like, yeah, because you're a Gemini and you can see every angle, every possibility. And you need other people to tell you who you really are because you can see all these possibilities for yourself. But also, it just doesn't work for everybody that way. And I find that astrology has one question. When were you born? You can't like fudge that.
Hey friends, it's Julie. I'm just popping in here real quick to tell you about a very special invitation we have for you. If you have been feeling deeply called to learn more about your feminine identity or to see what feminine power really is, or you're just loving the podcast, then Kaylee and I would love to invite you to join our community, Feminine Alchemist. Inside, we host live monthly women's circles, challenges, and Wheel of the Year celebrations. They are seriously so much fun. We have monthly workshops where we bring in experts to teach on anything from menstruation to mythology. You'll also get access to our library of courses about astrology, intuition techniques, sacred embodiment, and cyclical living. And most importantly, you'll be able to connect with women who are like-hearted and walking the same path as you. So if this sounds exciting to you, join today by clicking the link in the show notes or going to femininealchemist.com. That's alchemist spelled MYST. Okay, back to the episode.
All right. Let's talk about elements. Since we are recording this on the actual equinox, guys. How cool is that? First of all. Second of all, since it's fire time, let's start with fire. Tell me about fire and how you relate to fire as an element, and then maybe how it plays out in the astrology for sure. Kaylee, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. Sorry, I looked away for a moment and did not notice that I was being summoned. Um,
I summon thee.
I am summoned. So fire. So if you think about the actual like experience of being near fire, it can be incredibly warming and it can be even comforting in a way. It's got this intensity to it. There's a crackliness to the energy, but also you can die. Fire can kill you. So there's just this really interesting, I don't know, juxtaposition almost of like giving life and taking life that's involved in fire energy. And also this idea of like a spark lighting something, just this tiny little like burst of energy, this burst of life, getting something going. And so when I look at the fire signs, I think about that. I think about that intensity, which can translate into passion. I think about that simultaneously, like creative and destructive kind of energy going on. Um, yeah. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I love it. Fire, everything you said is perfect and beautiful. Fire is masculine, right? Masculine is verbs, feminine is nouns. Fire is also a flow. I find it I've been doing things where I stare at fire for a very long time during a very tough time of my life, right? And so I would just like burn stuff, which is a wonderful thing to do if you are having a tough time in your life, just burn things. Um so I made myself a challenge to burn all the branches in my yard during this time. And then the tree kept dropping more and I was like, okay, I think I'm completing this experience. But I spent a lot of time staring at fire. And what I realized is fire is like also the opposite of water when it comes to gravity. It goes against gravity. And fire to me actually comes from another dimension. It's like Haley said, it's that burst of energy, but that burst of energy doesn't come from this plane. In a way, it comes from another plane and it comes in. Like all of the lore around fire and where it comes from, it came from the gods. It always comes from some divine source. It does not come from the earth. And because there is no space in nature where it's just fire existence, right? Air exists, water is here, earth is here. Fire doesn't just exist. It has to like consume. So it's a very different element than the other three. And of course, we're starting with that because that's the starter. It's the initiator. It's the driver. It is the thing that makes your car go. Somebody went, let's take fire and put it on wheels, and that's why we drive, right?
Fire is life force.
Yes.
At least in my opinion, it's life force. Yeah.
I think the soul is fire is, well, fire my spirit, right? Fire my spirit. When you say earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, fire my spirit, it is the driver. It's the reason that we're driving forward at all. So those are my thoughts on fire. But yes, exactly. It's like it could be this warm, cozy thing, or it could also be like terrifying death, right? Like there is this dichotomy. There is this piece here.
Yeah,
What are
I
your thoughts,
think.
Julie?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think fire. I for some reason, and I think this is a true thing. That happens is sometimes we tend to attract like the elements that are in our 10th house often. And because it's like our more visible, and my 10th house happens to be Leo. And so I don't know why, but people with fire placements like just come into my life like crazy. And my husband is a Sagittarius sun and an Aries moon. And both of my kids, like two of my three kids, have a lot of fire placements. So I feel like I've gotten to know this element very well. And when we're talking about this element, we're talking about elements in general. So I just want to bring people back so that they understand like why are we talking about elements when we're talking about astrology? And that's because the elements are the foundation of all of astrology, right? Astrology is based on four elements, right? We've got fire, water, air, and earth. And as people probably have already guessed, and Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. So fire is always the beginning of and the initiator and the starter. And that's why we're like starting with fire. And but every so like people have probably heard of, the signs, right? There's signs like we've been saying them, Sagittarius, Gemini, all these different signs, Aries, and each of those signs is an element. So it has an element. So there are three of each. So there's three fire signs and three water signs and three air signs and three not four. Yeah, there's three. Three air signs and three earth signs. There's three of each because there's 12 signs altogether. So we want to start with this base, because if you can understand the quality of the element, you can understand the signs. It's easy. Like once you get the quality of the element, all the signs start to make sense to you, and they come together. So when we're talking about this fire element to start out, I agree with everything that's been said. It's an initiator and a starter. It's that inner churning, that inner burning inside of us. But I want to say, like, and I think both Kaylee and Jan did this beautifully, is whenever we think about this, we want to think about the quality. What's the quality of this element? What's the quality? And part of the quality Jan mentioned and has been mentioned before is this quality of movement and this quality of needing to consume something. Fire needs to be able to keep going. It's got to consume something, and it can't just live on its own because it will die without something to consume. And so that means, like, fire signs and fire in general, that's why it's connected to drive. That's why, because it needs more. It needs more and more and more and more to survive. It will never settle. It can't settle. And that's why fire can be notorious for being non-committal in relationships, because it always wants more. Air can be that way too, but like, you just think about that. Like, what is that quality of fire? Like, why is it connected? And why do we always say, like, I've got a fire burning in my belly, or I've got a fire in my chest. I just have to do it, right? Because fire makes you move. You got to move away from that hot fire, or you got to follow it. And that's the other quality I wanted to talk about, is you can't help but look at a fire. Just like Jan was talking about. That's why you want to look at it. You have to look at fire, because fire demands attention. It demands that you like see it, and that it sparkles, and that it shines. And like, that's such a big part of fire, is like, it lights the way. It's like the torch. And all three of the fire signs do it in a different way, but all of them demand your attention in a certain way, and need that. Like, that's why, like, fire signs often, not always, but often, they want some kind of recognition. They want to be adored. They want you to see their accomplishments. Not so much as like a Capricorn energy per se. It's a little bit different, but they need to sparkle, right? Like, they need to, like, woo, here I am, kind of a deal. So they drive our hunger to do and to move and to and then also, we've been kind of dancing around it, but like, fire can get angry. Okay, fire is angry. Sometimes it's angry. All the signs get angry sometimes. They all do. They all get angry, but fire is notorious for, like, it will burn your finger off. Like, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, and it will go from being your friend to being not your friend. That doesn't mean it's a bad friend, or it's like overly choosy, but this leads me to my final point. Sorry. I'm on a roller coaster of like, da 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 da, karate chop, cha cha cha, these elements. But the thing that leads me to say, and I will say, every element has judgment in its own way. Every element judges. However, I would say the way fire judges, fire can be particularly, I think fire sees itself as a very good discerner. It's a very good discerner because it knows the difference between light and dark. It shines light on things. And so it thinks of itself as very good at knowing right from wrong, or good and not. And like, having those boundaries is a little bit easier for fire, because it's like, oh, I'm hot, don't touch me. So it's a lot easier for that. And so fire can be judgy in this way, that's like, you're either with me or against me. Like, it's right, or it's, it kind of just slices and dices in that way, and it's not as afraid. Whereas like, air is like, can't do the boundaries. I like everybody, and da 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 da. And but fire's like, cut through the crap. Here I am. So I just wanted to point that out, because and it doesn't mean anything
Love
bad
that.
about
I love
anybody.
that.
But yeah, there you go.
My cousin says, she's a Leo. My cousin says, like, leaders are just right usually. She straight up said that. She's like, that's just how it works. And eventually everybody figures out that we're just right. It's just like, yeah, there you go.
Yes,
So let's move
they are.
forward to Earth. Yes, they are. They are. Uh Earth. Earth. Like, where did my brain go? Let's talk about Earth. What are its qualities and how do they relate astrologically and all that good stuff and whatever you want to say about that.
All right. Well, Earth is very connected to matter. There's a certain solidity to it. There's a certain um tangibility. And so the earth signs, they do tend to have to deal more with physical things, practical things. Um and there's just like this stability. You can count on earth to stay earth, and you can count on it to be where you put it, except not always. But mostly you can count on it to be where you put it, barring like an earthquake or something crazy like that. But it takes a lot of force to move Earth. There's an earthquake, unless we start bringing in water, and we'll get there eventually. Water can do a lot to Earth, but it takes time, usually, a lot of time. Um, but Earth, it can also be kind of like cloying and heavy in a more quote unquote negative sense. But that firmness and that like foundational energy is also like you can build on that. You can depend on that. And you can grow something out of that. There's a fertility as well to the earth signs, whether it's like literal fertility of like children or plants, or a more like a fertility of like an abundance of stuff. Like I have lots of resources. Resources are connected in large part to those earth signs. I'm ready to defer to someone else now.
I love it. So with the Earth, I find that Earth tends to be the most, obviously, most structured, right? It's going to have that structure, that like stability, like Haley said. But Earth, people with heavy Earth are going to struggle with seeing new opportunities. They're going to struggle with some kind of thinking outside the box, because in their mind, like everything in front of them is what is here. And why would I bother with thinking anything else? Because that doesn't exist, right? And so having that ability to push past those boundaries sometimes can be tricky for Earth people. And I find it really, really, because I have like almost zero Earth in my chart. Well, one thing, it's Mars. So I'll pull tarot cards, and all of the cards are related to the elements, right? And so the coins, or the pentacles, the coins, whatever, is the earth's element. And I go, "Ooh, I got a coin. I want to see what's the money thing happening," right? And I look at it, and it's like, "Be dependable," where it's like, "Wait your turn." And I'm just like, boring earth stuff, right? But that's the reason why earth is so important, because yeah, it's boring and it's in the background, but it's there because it is holding a force that the other elements actually can't hold. It is holding that stability and that dependability, and you don't have that in the other elements. It's just so important, and it's like, just do the thing. Just, this is the thing, and this is what exists, and this is it. The end.
Yeah. Earth is like incredibly pragmatic, right? It's quite
Yes.
practical. Yeah, that's its job, right? We say
It's
that
down
that's
to
the
earth.
yes, that's why we say it, down to earth. Yeah, she's really down to earth, she gets it. And so earth in that way can be very relatable, in this way that like we all need resources, right? We all need stability. We all crave stability. We all crave this ability to have our needs met. And that's why like earth can come off so it can be come off really relatable in that sense, and like easeful, because it's also still, it's the stillness. We kind of went to the most, well, I don't know. I guess I'd say like air is the most movement oriented of all the elements, and but earth is definitely the least movement oriented of all the elements. Fire is pretty close. So we went to a high movement to a low movement. And they have some similarities in that, just in that how fire is, like we were talking about at the end, because it burns and it's so bright and it's like, don't touch me, I need my way. And that way earth can be the same way. I am unmovable, I am unstoppable, I am relentless, I will get my own way. And so they kind of have that in common between the two of them. And so fire, even though I would not describe fire as stubborn per se, sometimes fire can come across as if it's stubborn, but it's not really stubborn. It's just burning. Really, it's setting its boundary, and it's good at setting its boundary. Whereas earth is actually stubborn, right? Earth is actually really stubborn, but earth also has many treasures, right? You dig in the earth to get your treasure, to get your stuff, the things that you love. And that's why earth is like so high achieving. Is very concerned about wanting to do things, like Jan was saying, wanting to do things right, wanting to be able to have that deep structure. Like it knows how to make a mountain. It is the mountain, and like like no one bows to the mountain, right? Like the mountain bows to no one, right? Everyone bows to the mountain bows to no one. And it's because, yeah, I worked freaking hard to, I am that hard working aspect of always getting up the mountain, climbing up the mountain, making yourself into a mountain that's immovable, right? Relentless and immovable. And that's why it can be slower paced, but that slow pace will always make it, like it will always make its way. It's kind of like the tortoise and the hare kind of a deal. Like the earth will always be that slow and steady and that grounded. And so because of that, and because earth is old, it's the oldest. I would say well, I don't know if it's the oldest element per se, but it is old. Okay. Let's just say it is, it contains everything, right? All our fossils are in the earth. All the evidence of the old stuff of us, all the ancientness is in the earth. It's inside the earth. And so because of that, earth has this like kind of like grown up quality to it and this ancient quality to it. And it kind of reminds me of like the emperor in Mulan, like just like this emperor in Mulan guy. And that's why earth wants respect real bad. It wants it real bad, and is not happy if it does not get respect, because it's like, I hold the secrets of the mountain, right? Like I hold the gems and I hold the ancient ways, right? It's that tradition, like just like Jan was saying, which is why like someone with a lot of air and water can be like, you're the worst, like you're the worst
You're
mountain,
such
like
a
you're the
stick in
worst
the
air.
mud.
Yes, yes, you're such a stick in the mud. Stop being a flippin' stick. You're not fun. This is not fun. And the earth is like, well, I have ancient secrets that you'll never know, and that's like the battle between that. But it's stuff like hard won, pragmatic, looking at things, structuring things. Yeah, that's what I'd say about earth.
I love everything you just said. And then going back to Jan talking about how Earth is different from all the rest, what makes Earth unique. You can't build something out of fire. You can't build something out of air. And if you want to build something out of water, you have to freeze it first. It has to become solid. It has to become more like Earth. But Earth, you can build something out of that. You can build something on that. You can build something in that. Like, it's very much that stability, that the foundation of everything else. And if you take that away, what is the fire and the air and the water going to do? Like, it's going to be even more nebulous than it already is. It's just going to be floating out in space. Like, if you want something to congeal, if you want it to come into physicality and tangibility, there's got to be some earth. There has to be.
Yeah, and that growing
Perfect.
aspect is important too. The idea that it can grow things in a lush garden, less resources, wanting to have that's how it gets its more quality, kind of like fire has its more quality. Earth has it in a different way of it wants to grow the lush garden. It wants those fruits, and it wants to continue to spread and make fruits.
Hey friends, it's Jayan here. If you have been feeling really stressed out about the world lately, you are not alone. There's been enough crazy and fear flying around the internet that even I've been knocked off my rocker sometimes. But it's times like these that I'm really grateful for the tools I have to regulate my nervous system. I developed these tools for myself when I was going through the thick of it. My babies were young and I had a ton of repressed anger. And these tools helped me through other stressful times, including negotiating my own divorce, having difficult money conversations, and of course, the whole COVID experience. And I've put all these tools in a method I call the authentic self-care method. This is different than other self-care programs because it is a framework for you to find your special sauce when it comes to self-care. And let me tell you a secret. Step 1 is not take a bath, get a haircut, or go to the gym. Step 1 is regulate your nervous system. And that's exactly what we do inside the 3-in-1 membership. This powerful program includes focused journals and meditations you can do in just a few minutes, like the fight or flight session, the hippocampus session, which rewrites your ability to see new possibilities, and the vagus nerve session, which helps you regulate your whole body in a crisis. Using these tools, members have reported feeling more empowered, more expansive, and many experience relief from actual physical pain, all for less than $2 a day. So join the 3-in-1 membership now so you can learn these tools today. The world is not going to become less crazy. The only thing you can control is how you respond to it. The 3-in-1 membership will help you do that, so click the link in the show notes to enroll today. Let's talk about air next. Let's talk about air. How does air come into play astrologically? Just all the things. How does it work?
Well, as always, for me, when I think about elements or when I'm introducing elements to somebody else, I think about the actual thing that's out there that is that element. Like if you think about air, it's everywhere. Well, maybe not quite everywhere, but it's all over the place and it's always moving. And you can't see it, but you sure can feel it. You know it's there. And there's kind of this flightiness and this adaptability that can come into play as well. But also like the phrase breath of fresh air, like air signs and air energy can be very refreshing, and it can bring new ideas and it can bring innovation. And because of that connection to so many different things, there's a social aspect as well to the air signs, and a kind of almost like a communal feeling. And just like all the signs have their own version of like anger or showing up in a little bit more intense or upset way. If you think about air when it's moving a lot, when there's a storm or a tornado, there can be just this like whirling sort of energy. And our thoughts are very similar. Our thoughts can be all over the place. They can whirl like a tornado. We can like, and so those air signs are also very connected to thoughts and ideas.
So good. Oh man. One of the biggest thing that I want to say about air is that most people think that logic is like solid. It's an earth thing. It is not an earth thing. Logic is as changing as the wind. And so when people go, "Oh, that's good logic," it is never forever. Logic is never meant to be forever. And that's why it's within air. Air is about our thoughts. Air is about the way we think and the way that we are like, okay, this is this and this is that. And I'm sandboxing it in a way, like I'm thinking about it in a certain way. And I'm gonna, then I bring it into earth and I test it. But you can't go, the logic is eternal. Computers are ruled by air, right? All of this computery stuff has to change from time to time because our needs for it change and the way that we interact with it changes. And so the logic inside of our computers changes. So it is that's all part of like the air stuff too.
Yeah, innovation is really important when it comes to air. Analyzation, like the ability to analyze and think, and redo, restart, rego, is very air-like. It's a such an air-like quality, and it brings, just like you and Kaylee said, is it's bringing new ideas, fresh things, fresh gusts. It is also, again, to point out the movement aspect, right? Air must move, it's got to move. And that's, again, why sometimes air can be categorized as indecisive. Oh, you're so indecisive, or you're really back and forth, or, especially in the case of Gemini, but particularly, I mean, for air in general, it can be, why are you being two-faced? Because you're one way when you're with me, and you're another way when you're with someone else. And air is not trying to, I just like to point out, most of the time, that like that ability to be changeable and to adapt to your environment, because that's what air does. It adapts to all the environments. It can live in every environment. It's present in every environment. And so that adaptability can and changeability can come off as, like we said, that two-facedness, or like, behind my back you say this or whatever. But for air, it's not about being two-faced per se, or trying to be hurtful or malicious, right? Like that's not the intent behind it. Most of the time it's just, no, I just adapted to my environment, and this is what my environment was, and I was playing and being what I am with the environment, and communicating what the environment needed and what was happening in the environment. Because air can be, in our real lives, it can be an indicator of what's going on, right? If you have dead air, you're like, oh, maybe a storm is coming because the air is dead right now. Or if you feel the static in the air or the electricity, then it's like, oh, the storm is here. Now the storm is here and it's blowing, it's moist, it's hot, it's wet, it's whatever. The air is just like an indicator and a symbol of the environment as a whole. And so that's why air really is focused on, like when we talk about Libra per se, of like balancing, or when we talk about Aquarius, focus on the whole or on the collective, is very important to air, because air is in all of the collective. It's part of the collective. It's always in all the environments. And so it can't help but to care about what happens in every environment, in all to the things that, to our collective society. And so that's why air has all these, is worried about, changing and adapting to what other people think, and balancing and making sure the scales are equal, and helping other people and innovating, like, how can we make it better? Because it wants to indicate the collective, and it's adapting to everything that's around it, and communicating, right? Communicating and traveling is very, very air.
What is the judginess nature of air, do you think?
I don't, if you want to go, Kaylee, you totally can.
Go for it.
I think the judginess of air is kind of something that JN said earlier, which is kind of hilarious in its own right. But the judginess of air is you're too strict, you're too rigid, you don't you're not open-minded, you don't bend, you don't play nice. And so air can judge other people for not being quick-witted, right? You're not quick-witted enough, you're not flexible enough, you don't you're a stick in the mud, you're not fun, or like, this is too serious. Because because air is on the surface, air can be like, oh, this deep stuff, oh, I don't like it, I do not like the deep stuff, because I live on the surface, right? So like water can be really hard for air, because water's like down here in the emotions, and like earth can be really hard for air, because air is like, no, let's stay up here and like flip through the sky. And so yeah, the judgment can definitely be like, oh, you're overly traditional, unchangeable, too hard, things like that.
You just described my life. I'm sorry. I did that to a very old organization. I was like, what is wrong with you guys? Why do you want to be stuck in the like 1980s? And they're like, why would we do it any other way? I'm like, there it is. Earth versus air, right there. I love it. What other thoughts do we have about air, if any? Again, All right, let's talk about water. Water, water, water everywhere.
Well, I guess I'll lead out since I have with the others. um, it's interesting. As I knew we were coming up on water, I was like, oh man, what am I going to say about water? Um, because it's like, oh, when fish, that idea of like fish don't know that they're in water, like they don't, they're just swimming in it, and sometimes I feel like I'm just swimming in it, so I don't even know. This is so natural and normal. um but water, if you look at actual water, um, it's super fascinating because it can be in different states. And no, I'm not talking about like Idaho versus Utah versus Virginia, not those kinds of states. I'm talking about states of matter. Like it can be a liquid and it can be a solid and it can be a vapor. Um, which is super fascinating because then it kind of relates a little bit more to two of the other elements. As it becomes a solid, it relates a little bit more to earth. And as it becomes a vapor, it relates a little bit more to air. But I don't know that water has a state where it's more similar to fire. But Jan did bring up that idea of like fire has a flow, but it flows upwards, whereas water has a flow and it flows downwards. So I think of water as kind of being, in some ways, just really connected to everything else. Um, and it fills the container that it's in or near. It flows and then it fills. And it can be really shallow, it can be really deep, it can flow really fast, it can be very still. It's very malleable, and yet at the same time, it shapes everything around it. It can dig a trench through the earth, it can erode the cliff. And so there can be this depth, which can include depth of emotion, depth of um, connecting to things that we don't always think of, or that we're not always consciously aware of. But then there can also be this like boisterous raging. um I don't know, water is just super fascinating, and if we go to look at it at a molecular level, like an actual water molecule is one of the most fascinating molecules ever. Because it's got its oxygen and it's got its two hydrogens, and the way that it's configured, it creates polarity. So it becomes kind of like a magnet. One end is slightly positive, one end is slightly negative. And it's just really fascinating to me. I don't even know for sure where I'm going with this, other than that like water is feminine, but even in its femininity, it's got that masculine positive and that feminine negative. And because of the nature of that polarity, when water molecules come together, closer together, like when water is frozen, they can only get so close and then they expand. They can't get too close. And that's why life can exist on this planet, because ice floats instead of sinking. It should sink. It should sink, except because of how a water molecule works. And so if ice were to sink instead of float, um, nothing could live in the ocean, and the entire ocean would freeze from the bottom up. And that would just dramatically change the entire planet. And so when I think about that, I think of water as being absolutely vital to life. That maybe it's not the origin, it's not the flashpoint, it's not the fire. But if you want life to continue, you have to have water. And I kind of went off on a tangent because I love science. But I will defer to you other two to add what you want to about water.
I love it. That was so good. Yes, because water is the same kind of earth boring in the life-giving sense, right? In the nourishment sense. It's that nourishing soup thing, right? That brings the nutrients from the earth and feeds the thing, whatever it is, so that you can build the body, so that you can have the messenger pathways and all the things. And because of its polarity, like Kaylee said, it's a powerful conductor of electricity in a different way than metals conduct electricity, right? So it's just like really interesting that it allows fire, because electricity is more fire than anything, allows fire within it in a certain aspect when normally it doesn't. Yeah. Beautiful stuff. And water is about healing. Water is about healing and nourishing. And like, right, like if you think of the classic Cancerian nature, it's just like, I'm really comfy and cozy. I'm going to wear my big cozy socks and have a blanket and sit with my coffee mug or whatever constituent and just sit there and sip on that and enjoy my cozy time, right? Um, and that's really what the water does, is like it gives you that capability of that moment of nourishment, that self-care. So go ahead, Julie, I want to hear your soapbox on this.
I guess I have all the soapboxes today. I'm very soapboxy. um I would say, so to break this down a little bit with what Kaylee and Jayanne were talking about with water. Water is over intuition. It's often associated with the subconscious or subconscious thoughts. Water is about connection and emotion, how we connect to each other, how we have that deep emotion within us. And I will say, like with air, right? What we talked about before, air is very social, connected, and buoyant, and happy and bouncy. And water, and it's social and connecting in that way because air fills up everything. Whereas water is more about those deeper emotional connections, that getting close to the intimacy part is really important to water. Water is very intimate because it's in everything, and it breathes life into everything in so many ways, and it works together with oxygen, with air, to do that, right? To give that fresh breath of air, um, to allow us to breathe and live and work. And so water, if you can see crossovers in all of the elements and how they're different, but they have some similarities. And so similar to air, water is about connection, but more intimate connection. And water is about flow and about movement, but it's much slower moving than fire and air. It's that third on the rung, as it has to flow with what's around it. And it also has that quality that air has of surrounding anything and like fitting into the shapes of things. And so that's why water has such a hard time with boundaries. It just doesn't do boundaries very well. It's very bad at them. And it can be just like air can be very bad at boundaries too, right? And that's why we have these tendencies of, because water is so nourishing, there's these tendency to overgive and to overnourish and to give to excess. And then what happens is when that happens, then we have the typhoon, right? Then the typhoon starts because of that, and the tsunami starts. And water has this quality where it can just wash over and wipe out everything. And that is kind of, whereas fire will burn down a whole village. It can't live forever because it needs more and more and more and more. And eventually there's no more. Whereas water, when it wipes out something, it's more of like a control aspect. It has this like it's kind of more of like um it's much more when you think of like a mama bear, right? Like you think about the mama bear, like, I will wipe you out, like I will make sure you are gone and I will wash over you. And so water has to be careful about not washing over other people in its giving. And that is like the over giving or the over controlling, or wanting to make things, wanting to surround everything and hold everything, because water holds everything, right? The ocean is so deep and water is so deep. And so people with water signs have a lot of deep emotions, and like, regardless of whether you think so or not, like you have crap buried down there, deep down there, that you tied to the bottom of the ocean thinking it would go away. It won't go away. It's always going to float to the surface because everything floats to the surface. And that's a part of water too, is the same stuff will kind of wash up. Stuff will wash up ashore. You'll find old stuff coming up. And also because it holds everything, you will find water, more than most other elements, will tend to hold everybody else's crap. So they'll hold on to everybody else. People will drop stuff in water, and the water will just be like, I can hold it. I can hold it. Particularly like Scorpio can get like this. Scorpio can be like, I got it all. I'm a deep, dark well, baby. Like, there's nothing you can't give to me. But eventually Scorpio can't handle it, right? Like, we can't hold it all. It will all rise to the surface. That also reminds me of water being a little more, water and earth having this a little bit more private, valuing some privacy, because even if you have a clear lake, it's going to look different under the surface than it does when you're on top of the surface. So no matter what, there's kind of a layer over water where there is kind of think about Cancer as a crab, that protective shell, or Scorpio also, right? That protection mechanism. And so where water does want intimacy and will overgive and will have no boundaries, it also has, there's some kind of like, don't break my heart. And if you betray me, like I will never forget it quality to it. And like air can have that, or not air, our earth can also have that quality of like I never forget. That's how they're like similar, like we can't, I can't forget it. So but it also has good qualities of like water is magical. We all know this. Water is pure magic. It can make magic. It's intuitive, it's spiritual. So, and the way that water judges is similar to air in some ways. It's like you don't care enough. Like, why don't you care about me? Why aren't you, why don't you want to feel everything? Like, I feel everything. Why don't, and it can, water has a tendency to see boundaries as people not loving it, when that's just not true, per se, but it will see the boundary as like, oh no, you don't love me anymore. Boundaries are not love. So, or like not being, caring enough can be a big one for water.
So good. So good. I had a conversation with a water deity some years ago. It was so silly. But he basically was like, I just like, tell me something important. And he was like, water is the embodiment of love. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Water is the physical embodiment of love. So everything you said, but like when we want to do unconditional love, we want to not have boundaries and we want to give, 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 give. So it doesn't have to be that way. We can have boundaries too. I love it. What is one last thing you guys want to say about all of this?
What's coming to mind for me right now is just if you're listening to this and you're new to astrology, and maybe you're still feeling overwhelmed, or maybe you're not, just start with one thing. Like if you want to just focus on water and really understanding water, or focus on fire and really understanding fire, or if you feel a little bit more like, okay, I can look at all these elements. If you don't know where they go yet, it's okay. Like this is not something that most people will pick up and just like nothing. It's layered and it's nuanced, and where you are is totally okay. And if you do happen to be one of those people who it's like you instinctively get astrology and probably studied it somehow before your current mortality or your current understanding, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And treasure that, because for most people, it is kind of this adjustment, and this like learning of a new language.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I would say, the best way to learn about the elements is just to experience them. Like, look at their qualities, understand their quality. Like, you can go and feel the air, you can go and feel the water and the dirt and the earth and light a fire. Like, see what they look like and tangibly feel like, and that will help you understand them much more. And because as much as this is an esoteric language, this is occult, like this is hidden stuff, but it's also plain for everyone to see as well. It's all out there for you to understand. And I would say also, like, notice crossovers between elements, because they'll have similar qualities to them and how they relate to each other, and similar, different, like we've touched on it a little bit here, but they'll have different affinities, and those affinities can inform you so much about like what you're like and what your chart is like. And then the last thing I just want to, and also you can learn more and more and more and more and more about them. There's always more and more things to say about each of the elements. Like, they're very deep. But the last thing I want to throw in, just a teeny tiny thing, because I think it's so cool, is each of the elements correlates with one of the cardinal directions. So Earth is north, just for people listening, like Earth is the north, the east is air, air is the east, south is fire, and west is water. So, and knowing that, I only give you that tidbit of information, one, because it's super cool, but two, because if you start reading things, especially old texts or listening to songs or things like that, when you hear the cardinal directions or even an element, now you can start putting things together in your mind. It might have deeper meaning to you than it did before, because I promise you, this language is everywhere in the earth. It's everywhere. It's in all the history. And once you can see it, it makes your life so much more meaningful. So, um, elements are amazing. Just experience them, study them, and notice them, and it will help you understand your life and yourself better.
Beautiful. I love it so much. Thank you guys so much for having this awesome conversation with me. And we will see you guys next week. Thank you guys for listening, and have a good one and stuff.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening and share with someone you know. See you next week.